Thank you, Mark, and we'd definitely like to thank the Center for Immigration Studies for hosting this event and drawing, hopefully, journalists who will turn around and cover these largely untold stories of the impact that these foreign guest worker rackets are having on American workers. And I think largely in the course of my career in daily opinion journalism and then also in new media over the span of a quarter century, the reluctance, the unwillingness, and the ideological opposition to covering the impact on American workers and American citizens of the vast plethora of immigration and entrance policies is probably one of the most alarming effects, I think, of the left-leaning media. And I think it speaks to a lot of problems in journalism in general. And much of the book is focused on trying to tell these stories in a riveting way, stories that if they were if they served opposite narratives would be on the front page every single day. And as Mark mentioned, the very first book I wrote in 2002 was on the impact of mass, uncontrolled, illegal immigration on national security and public safety. And obviously, after all of these years, little has changed because just recently, earlier this year, it came to the forefront of political and policy debates. And now I think with regard to the issues that we address in the book, John and I think that the timing of it couldn't be more fortuitous or serendipitous or maybe even providential, because it seems after a lot of stops and starts and a cycle of ebbs and flows, that we're finally getting traction in telling these stories like Leo's. And the book is divided into three sections, and the first section is on the H-1B racket itself, and it opens up with one of those rare occasions when an ordinary citizen was able to challenge a top political official, the commander-in-chief, Barack Obama. Her name was Jennifer Waddell. She was a suburban Texan mom and wife whose husband was laid off, who happened to be a top-of-the-line semiconductor engineer, and was a victim in the same way that the victims at Disney and Southern California Edison and Fossil and dozens and dozens and dozens of other companies in this country were. And she just happened to come upon a YouTube contest to submit videos to the president and ask him questions about jobs and the economy. And unlike so many of the mainstream journalists, frustratingly, here in Washington and in the Manhattan bubble, she wanted to press him on a very personal case of what happened to her husband. And so we describe that whole scene. And it was interesting because when the Beltway press corps was forced to cover it, because she made such a splash in the blunt way in which she confronted Barack Obama, it was clear that most of these journalists had no idea what she was talking about, just like President Obama. The myths that surround the way that the H-1B law actually works, the vast exceptions there are to the supposed non-displacement and recruitment requirements that the tech lobbyists and all of their front groups and the politicians that carry their water regurgitate over and over again, even though they know it flies in the face of the truth. So when Beltway journalists actually confronted the White House press secretary on it, the tenor of the questions actually had nothing to do with the policy involved. It had to do with whether it was racist or not to bring the question up in the first place. And I believe that this obstruction, this intellectual roadblock to examining the actual impact of these policies, is a result of this idea that scrutinizing the intent of the programs and comparing it to the actual results is somehow an indication that you are in bed with the worst xenophobes and nativists in the country. And we fully expect those kind of attacks because they happen every single day. The second section of the book deals with the numerous ways in which the already flimsy American worker protections that are supposedly in the H-1B program are circumvented. And this is a theme that was central to invasion, just the systematic disrepair and inability of all of our federal agencies to actually do their jobs, enforce the laws and the rules of all these programs that are on the books, and the complete overwhelming of the bureaucratic machine, whether it's the B-1 program, the F-1 foreign student program, and John will talk more about the optional practical training aspect of that as well, which is turning foreign student visa program, which is in essence supposed to serve our interests by bringing foreign students here, exposing them to our culture so that they can go back to their home countries and be goodwill ambassadors for the United States, and has ended up morphing into a massive, endless, interminable pipeline for cheap foreign workers for these Silicon Valley companies and other companies in the country. The L visa program as well, and then we also talked about the EB-5 Cash for Citizenship program. As I say, we really do feel like, in some sense, the timing is fortuitous, because not only is there a growing awareness of so many of the root problems with these programs, but also I think that there's much more synergy with alternative forms of media and alternative forms of disseminating information to get the stories out of Americans who've been negatively affected by them. And then, of course, another theme of much of my work has been following the money. And so the third section of the book talks about a number of these front groups, which are quoted blindingly and without question by many open borders, left-wing ideologues in the press, without any kind of real understanding of how the numbers are crunched and how the data is cooked. In part, as I said, there's apathy. In part, it's ideology, and in part, I think it's a function. The failures of reporting in this area are a function of time crunches and 24/7 news cycles, and a lack of time to digest it. In large part, what we are trying to do with Sold Out is accomplish an educational and in some sense an evangelical mission to get people to have a real deep enough understanding of what's going on with these programs. And in order to be able to do the kind of follow-up questioning, particularly in a presidential election cycle, of these candidates' claims or their silence on these issues. And even with the last debate with my friends at Fox Business Network, there's been an admission of failure to follow up on some of these core issues. Thank you.